As the world's premier MMA promotion, it is widely accepted that the best fighters on the planet turn out for the UFC. However, that isn't always the case. And over the years, some truly world-class fighters have slipped through the cracks. Today, we are discussing the best fighters from other organizations who have never fought in the UFC, so don't go anywhere. First up, it's Kayla Harrison. Harrison is widely regarded as the top of the food chain female fighter and is almost certainly in the top 5 best women in the world conversation right now. Like Ronda, she has excelled at using judo throughout her career and is currently signed to the PFL. Kayla won gold at the 2012 Olympics in judo and followed that up with another gold 4 years later, before deciding to make the transition over to MMA. And it's safe to say she hasn't looked back. Since making her debut back in June 2018, she has been undefeated and has racked up 11 straight wins. Talk of a crossover super fight with Amanda Nunes refuses to go away too, which would probably be one of the biggest women's MMA fights of all time. All this means that Kayla Harrison is almost certainly the best female fighter to ever feature in the UFC. What do you guys think? Yaroslav Amosov is coming through next. Ukraine's Amosov shocked a few people back in June 2021 as he outpointed the world-class Douglas Lima to win the Bellator welterweight title. Despite not fighting since then, he has been in his native Ukraine due to the war. Amosov is still widely regarded as one of the best welterweights on the planet. With a perfect record of 26-0, Amosov is still only 29 years old and has worked his way through the welterweight ranks in just 4 years. And his resume is also pretty solid, dispatching the likes of Eric Silva, Ed Ruth, and Gerald Harris, as well as the aforementioned Lima. Where would you guys place Amosov in the UFC rankings? Let us know below. We're talking about AJ McKee now. Stay with us. McKee won the Bellator featherweight title last year, beating one of the all-time greats in the shape of Patricio Pitbull in the process. However, Pitbull would exact his revenge in the rematch, but McKee is still right there in that particular division, having beaten Spike Carlyle last time out. With just a solitary loss so far in his MMA career, McKee has dominated every one of his wins so far and highlighted how slick he was after submitting Pitbull last year. He was born and bred for MMA and is still only 27 years old. There is no reason why he couldn't move over to the UFC and challenge Volk and those guys later in his career. What do you guys make of AJ? Next up, it's Gina Carano. Gina is a true MMA legend and one of the early women's pioneers. She turned out for promotions such as Elite XC and Strikeforce back in the day, before coming up against many people's women's GOAT, Chris Cyborg, back in August 2009. Unfortunately, that fight would be her last in the octagon, as she decided to focus on her acting career after losing to the Brazilian. During her heyday, there was no women's division in the UFC, but had she continued fighting, there is no doubt she would have done some damage in the women's divisions. Where do you guys rank Gina Carano in your all-time female fighters list? Joe Warren is coming through next. Stick around. There was a point in time when Joe Warren was legitimately one of the best featherweight and later bantamweight fighters on the planet. Having won the Bellator Season 9 bantamweight tournament back in November 2013, Warren would go on to win and unify the bantamweight division in his next fight against Eduardo Dantas. However, he had already been crowned the featherweight champion back in 2010, joining a very select group of fighters to win titles in 2 different divisions in an MMA promotion. Despite having a slightly questionable record of 15-8, Warren would score huge wins over the likes of Patricio Pitbull over his career, cementing his legacy and his status as one of the best fighters to never turn out in the UFC. Where do you guys think Joe Warren would rank in the UFC's bantamweight and featherweight rankings if he was still fighting today? Let us know below. Douglas Lima is joining us now. Lima is undoubtedly one of the greatest welterweights MMA has ever seen. Admittedly, his star faded in recent years as he is now riding a 4-fight losing streak, but over the course of the 2010s, he was easily one of the best fighters in the world, taking out some of the heaviest hitters in the world during his run as 2-time Bellator welterweight champion, including Paul Daly, Michael Page, and the talented Rory MacDonald. Douglas was regarded for his sheer athleticism and ferocious power. During his run as Bellator champ, Lima was seen as easily the best welterweight outside the UFC, with multiple people suggesting he would have taken out the UFC's welterweight champion of the time, Tyrone Woodley. Although Douglas himself has never turned out for the top MMA promotion in the world, his brother Diego has fought in their welterweight ranks, but hasn't been since dropping 2 in a row to Bilal Muhammad and Matt Brown. Where do you guys rank Douglas among the best welterweights of all time? Next up, it's Sergey Kharitonov. Stay with us. At 42 years old and still going strong, Sergey Kharitonov is a legend of heavyweight MMA. You simply need to look at his resume to understand the level of fighter we are talking about here. Over the course of his long career, he has appeared in various different organizations, most notably Bellator and Pride, and has also taken out some some bona fide legends of the game. He beat former UFC heavyweight king Fabricio Werdum back in 2005 and also flatlined another UFC legend in the shape of Alistair Overeem a year later. He also holds notable wins over the likes of Roy Nelson, Joey Beltran, Matt Mitrione, and a whole host of others to firmly establish himself as a legitimate heavyweight threat. For one reason or another though, a UFC deal was never offered, which, given some of the pretty poor heavyweights we have seen in the UFC over the years, it's a bit of a travesty. Are you guys Kharitonov fans? Shinya Aoki is joining us now. Japan's Aoki is the proud owner of a 47-10-1 record, and at 39 years old, he is still going strong in the one organization. Over the course of his career, Aoki has turned out in no fewer than 4 weight divisions, winning titles in 2 of them, and taking out a who's who of legitimate killers along the way. Widely regarded as one of the best grapplers the sport has ever seen, the revelation that he has never appeared in the most popular promotion comes with a side of shock. Having spent the majority of his career with Asia-based promotions such as Risen and One, Aoki holds notable wins over the likes of Eddie Alvarez, Kazushi Sakuraba, Kale Uno, and Eduardo Folyang. Do you think Aoki should have gotten the call from Dana at some stage in his career? Next up, it's Patricio Pitbull, arguably the greatest fighter Bellator has ever produced. The Brazilian legend overcame adversity earlier this year as he managed to wrestle back the featherweight title he had lost to AJ McKee last year. With an insane MMA record of 34-5, Pitbull is a 2-weight champion and was unbeaten for 5 years before coming up against McKee in 2021. During that time, he won 7 bouts, including one against current UFC lightweight challenger Michael Chandler, who is sniffing around the title picture right now. The fact that he has managed to overcome the disappointment of losing his title last year and has begun to put together another run speaks volumes to his character. And as such, he is safely inside the top 10 best fighters to never fight in the UFC. At 35 years old, the likelihood is that the UFC ship has now sailed for Pitbull, but he proved this year he can still bang. Where does he rank for you guys? And finally, it's Fedor. Legitimately, one of the scariest men to ever grace an octagon. Russian heavyweight Fedor Emelianenko is widely regarded to be not just the greatest fighter to never fight in the UFC, but the greatest heavyweight of all time, period. Until 2021, he had only been beaten once across the whole previous decade, taking out the likes of Big Nog, Krokop, Coleman, Sylvia, and Arlovsky along the way. He also proved he has what it takes mentally to bounce back after a setback. After losing 3 in a row during the early part of the last decade, he put together another 5-fight win streak. He has slowed down in recent years, but that's only due to his 46 years. Undoubtedly, one of the best to ever do it. It was a shame the UFC could never bring him across. What do you guys make of Fedor? As always, thanks for stopping by today, and remember to tune in again next time for some more fun reveals. And why not do us a big favor by liking and sharing today's video? Bye guys.